name's Rob Hornby, and I work for AlixPartners, who are a global consultancy, and we focus on what we call when it really matters scenarios, so situations of urgency that can be good or bad. And I guess it's not surprising we're quite busy at the moment because our world seems to be throwing up a lot of these high urgency situations. But before I joined AlixPartners, I was the CIO of Old Mutual Wealth Management. And in fact, the person who took over from me is sitting here, so the factual accuracy of what I say can be verified. If you see him walk out, he's probably not happy. But we went through a journey in that time of fundamentally changing the business model. And I think most people would describe it as a technology-enabled change to our business model. I'm actually going to argue that that is not the case and that there is no such thing, which maybe will keep you awake in this kind of womb-like environment that we're all sitting in. In fact, the last time I was talking with a stenographer, I was in the Royal Courts of Justice giving evidence for 4 days. So I'll try and be less nervous than that, and I'll try not to talk for 4 days either. So, in 2006, Old Mutual bought a company called Scandia, which was a life and pensions company. It had a reputation for innovation, but the innovation was in its product sets and not really in the way that it went to market. In 2007, a strategic outsource of its IT was completed to HCL, and that's how I know HCL. And that was a really big shift. It was a seismic shift for the company in the way that it worked. And that was actually a big change in its business model in itself, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. So things were progressing, and we were kind of happy. And then in 2009, we had a big strategic decision. And we decided that we needed to change our business, and we needed to become an online business. So we were transacting about 80% of our transactions using paper, from brokers in the market who were advising end customers about their investments, and they were sending us bits of paper. And I actually mean bits of paper, so there's all sorts of proper forms that they should have filled in, but they used to stick things under our door and all sorts. And we had a reputation for being the people who would take that stuff and make it work. And it was a big decision for us to say, actually, we're going to move so that our transactions are online. But that's the decision that we took. We felt that's where the market was going, and we felt that there was latent demand for that. And we created a very elegant and very convincing 2-year plan, and I was part of that process. I was the CIO. There was a lot of technology involved in this, and we were happy with that plan. However, we did not really think carefully enough about the human effect of changing the incentives of your sales force. And what happened was the transition of the type of business shifted in 6 months because we incentivized our sales force to sell a different type of business which was transacted online. And of course, the vast majority of my colleagues were absolutely delighted because we're ahead of plan. Unfortunately, as the CIO, I think you can afford to be a little bit less delighted. I managed to smile through gritted teeth for the sake of the whole business, but we were laying the tracks in front of the train, and the train could not be stopped. And it was a scary experience, and we were having to use every bit of ingenuity, every bit of prioritization we could muster to make sure that our new online platform could scale and be robust. We had some big discussions to have with HCL about a completely new set of requirements, which were not what our original 5-year contract envisaged, and they were fantastic. But this was a very, very traumatic time. It kind of ends well in that in 2010, the first 9 months of the year, our sales through the online channel had switched it round such that 80% of our transactions were now online and only 20% on paper. And our online transaction platform had grown in that year by 138%, which sounds great in business terms. I think that's the approximate percentage of hair that I lost that year. It's a happy ending, and yet, if you reflect on it, and that's just what I want to do for the remaining couple of minutes, is just to reflect on what was the meaning of that experience, because that looks like a technology-enabled change. That looks as if we said we're going to use an online platform, and the online platform is going to bring us a new business model. But the truth is that that is not really true. Well, I'm going to put it to you that it's not really true. What we actually did is respond to a market that existed. It was a latent market, and we accessed a market through technology. The key thing about the transformation was it was driven by customer demand. And it doesn't matter how much technology you deploy, if you connect to something which is not a market, you will not have a successful transformation. So it was a market-driven transformation. However, it did use technology, and technology was a key component in being the bridge to those customers. However, I don't think the transformation was a technology transformation either. I worked very, very hard to do the technology part of that work, and ultimately we were successful. But this was not a technology transformation, because transformation, in my view, is mostly a human thing. Because when you say that your business is going to be a different business, that has a psychological effect on the individuals, so they have to think about how they fit in. It has a social effect in that it breaks up a whole bunch of relationships in the company. It has a positioning effect in that the hierarchy changes and suddenly new people are in powerful roles. It de-skills some people and it places other people into the spotlight. And actually the truth is that the ability to respond and create new business models, in my opinion, however much technology is involved, actually requires all those factors to work out. They are the most important. I think companies who manage to transform their business models do so because they hold it together as companies, as groups of people working together. The technology is absolutely core, but I don't think it's the decisive component. And then my final reflection on that time is that the idea that you can control a transformation fully, I think, is a misnomer. I think the most ridiculous job title, and I'm sorry if anyone here holds it, that I've ever seen is Transformation Manager, or in fact, even worse, Transformation Director, as if you can kind of tell that transformation just what you want it to do, because it's a very, very complex thing. It unleashes all sorts of dynamics that you cannot anticipate. And the Scandia situation was very much like that, where we had this sudden acceleration of what we'd set off that just couldn't be stopped. And I think more than anything else, the generation of leaders for the 21st century, and particularly in our industry, need to be people who can handle dynamics that they can't fully anticipate in advance. I think that is the mark of the new generation of leaders required. Because in our world, and I call this kaleidoscope times, every time you look, it looks like a different picture, and we didn't really anticipate it. I don't think we've ever been less able to predict the future than we are today. And therefore, we need people who are leading our industry and our companies who can respond to the unknown and can figure out what to do very, very quickly in order to ensure that our transformation objectives, whatever they are, come to pass, probably not quite through the route that we expected, but that we get to the right place and perhaps learn something more about what that right place is. So I would just appeal to us all and say, let's not be fooled into thinking that technology transformation of business models is a real thing in isolation. It's a very, very complex, market-driven and human endeavor. It's not something that we can entirely control. It's great fun, and I think it's probably what's going to mark out the future of business for the next 10 to 15 years. Thank you very much.